I grew up in a relatively new suburb, yet it has an urban legend that goes around. A legend that kids whisper to each other in the schoolyard. I know, because I was the one that first spoke about it. About him. The man on the stairs. When I was little, I would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night. I was afraid of the dark, but my mother told me to just close my eyes and wait for sleep to come. So every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I would lay back down with my eyes closed, waiting. Then that is when I would hear it. The stairs creaking, as if someone heavy was standing on them and was moving up. I had lived in that house ever since I was 1 year old. I knew the sound of that staircase like the sound of my own voice. I knew that the staircase had 12 steps, and as I heard the cracking of the stairs, I would count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I knew that it wasn't my mum and dad. They would always leave the light on in the hallway before they went to bed. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then it would stop. Always at 11. I would hold my breath, afraid that he, or whatever it was that was standing on my stairs, would hear me. But that final step never came. They seemed to just stand there, waiting. I'm a very imaginative person, and I knew that from a very young age. I knew very well how to scare myself. So I asked my sister, who is almost 2 years older than me, whether she had heard it too. She's much more level-headed and liked to mock me for my overactive imagination. So I expected her to laugh at me for this too, but she didn't. She just looked at me with big eyes and asked, "You hear it too?" I was in middle school and had many friends who lived near me. One time, during lunch break, I gathered about 8 of my friends around and asked the same thing. Asked whether they had ever heard footsteps on their stairs at night, and all who lived but a couple of streets away from my house said yes. Yes, they had heard them. They had heard the footsteps on the stairs. The footsteps that came and then stopped. The man on the stairs, who always stood on the stairs waiting, never reaching the top. Years passed and I forgot about it. The sounds at night must have stopped, or I just didn't wake up at night anymore. I don't remember. A decade passed without me giving another thought to the man on the stairs. I still lived in the same street as before, and I became a babysitter for one of the houses on that street. 2 boys, one 7 years old and the other 5. One night, I was tucking the 5-year-old boy in his bed when he asked me to keep on the light in his room. But, I asked him, "Isn't the light in the hallway enough?" "No," he said, "no," and he was afraid. He was afraid of the darkness, because in the darkness there was someone. Someone on the stairs, he said. There's always a man on the stairs, waiting. This experience occurred when I was around 5 or 6 years old, and I'm 15 now. I went to this small, local daycare with around 4 other kids, all roughly the same age as me. The woman who ran the daycare wanted to take us all on a small trip to see a mother in the nursing home on the other side of town, which wasn't too far. The other kids and I all got into the caretaker's carpool van, and we drove to the nursing home. While in the waiting room, the caretaker was at the front desk talking to the person behind it. I remember looking down the hallway of the waiting room and saw a woman wearing all black, sitting in a chair at the very end of the hall. She had a black dress on with long sleeves, black tights and a huge black sun hat that draped over her face. Nobody seemed to be paying her any mind. Nobody even seemed to acknowledge that she was even sitting there at all. I walked up to her and noticed that she was looking down and wouldn't look up at me. I noticed that the veins on her arms were extremely visible and almost protruding from her arms, and she seemed to be covered in saran wrap from head to toe, like some sort of film all over her. It was wrapped around her hands, her neck, and as far as I could see from under her sun hat, it was on her face as well, and her face was quite wrinkly too. But I assumed that she was just old or something, Being the annoying ass 5-year-old I was, I decided to poke her until she looked at me. I kept poking and poking her hand, but she never responded. But after a while, she finally looked up. Her eyes were a glassy white, and her irises were white as well. She had no pupils. She had a bemused expression on her face, no smile or frown. It scared the living shit out of me. But I only really got scared when I noticed the saran wrap was skin tight against her face as well. It didn't click at the time. I just thought she was a scary woman. But how could anyone breathe if they're covered in saran wrap from head to toe? Why were her eyes glassy and white? I ended up scurrying back to the caretaker at the front desk, and me and all the other kids ended up meeting her mother that day. She was a nice lady. Nobody else seemed to notice that the woman in the lobby was there though. And I've only told a few people about this because I know that it probably sounds like complete and utter bull. But I wanted to know if anyone here can debunk this, or have had anything similar happen to them. Thank you. Today's shoutouts go out to Michelle Warwick, Charlene Davis, KR the one and only, and Project Entity. Thank you for the support.